Lots of talk about budget changes over the last few days. For those involved in reconstructions, we had quite a fundamental redesign of the anti-avoidance test for share exchanges, reconstructions and demergers. So for years, HMRC relied on Section 137 of the Capital Gains Act, which blocked relief for share exchanges and reconstructions only where the exchange was part of a tax avoidance scheme. But this test kept failing in the courts. They had Wilkinson and Delinian in 2023, where the tribunals agreed there were avoidance motive steps, but those share exchanges themselves weren't part of an avoidance scheme. So HMRC lost in both cases. The Finance Bill 2025 introduces a radically broader test. The commercial purpose test is gone completely. The reconstruction relief can now be denied where any part of the arrangements has the main purpose or one of the main purposes of reducing or avoiding tax, capital gains tax and corporation tax. And HMRC can now examine any agreement, understanding or informal step because arrangements has been expanded as well. So this neutralises Wilkinson and Delinian cases as well as others. It no longer matters that the main transaction is commercial or only one step has a tax motivated intention. If any of the steps in the transaction look like avoidance, HMRC can now intervene. So that is a big shift to what we had in the past. Previously, HMRC technically had one option to deny relief on the entire transaction, but now they can make whatever adjustment they deem just and reasonable, including partial disapplication of the relief. So that means they can target only the tax motivated step. Different shareholders in theory can be treated differently, and the commercial elements can still receive relief. So that's a lot more flexibility, and it's going to change how reorganisations are designed and potentially challenged as well. Another change is that the protection previously for minority shareholders has gone. So if shareholders own 5% or less, they can also be within the realms of the anti-avoidance rule. And we'll see how this affects clearance processes, especially while the clearance unit get themselves up to speed with the new provisions as well as advisors. Even though the commercial purpose is no longer in the legislation, I still expect HMRC will scrutinise more closely things like why each step is necessary, the alternatives to be considered, who benefits from each step, does a step improve someone's tax position by design? All of those types of things are potentially more under the microscope. So one example I have thought of already is where, if you remember in the past, I've looked at an uplift in base cost on properties when we do demergers, and I've talked about how you can get a tax-free uplift by designing a demerger in a certain way. Well, now is that step of the transaction open to challenge from HMRC? We'll have to see. So what does all this mean for advisors and businesses? You'll need to break down the transactions into clear commercial steps. You'll need to justify each component. We need to anticipate potentially longer clearance processes, especially whilst HMRC asks questions in relation to this new anti-avoidance test. So quite a fundamental change and not really something I was expecting, even though actually in hindsight, perhaps Wilkinson and Delinian should have made this quite an obvious thing that HMRC would want to redesign.
As always, like, comment, share. It lets me know that these videos are well received. And if you have any comments or interpretation of this legislation, really interested to hear everyone's thoughts.